Ladies and gentlemen, welcoming you all on International Affairs, broadcasting live from the Dhaka's Gulshan studio. I am your host, Shamsul Pantho, and alongside I have a terrific panel today. I want to welcome back our international consultant, John Dalton, back into the studio. It's good to have you here, sir, and I'm very happy to be hosting you today. Alongside, in Washington, District of Columbia, we have our geopolitical correspondent, Norman Floyd Barnes, joining us through Zoom. But before I begin, I want to give everyone a short reminder of the major news that is coming out of the entire world. And of course, that includes Benjamin Netanyahu's upcoming meeting with Donald Trump about the Iran negotiations that have taken place in Oman's Muscat. Alongside, we have Syria and Saudi Arabia landing landmark deals, which of course signifies the strategic agreements, and Zelensky's remarks about a U.S. deadline to end the war with Russia by the summer. But I want to focus on Southeast Asia, where we have election coming up. 3 prime ministers has been changed in 3 years, a sluggish growth and a war with Cambodia. Of course, I am talking about Thailand as it reeks in a key election. Millions of Thais are voting today in a key election following years of political turmoil. I want to begin with Norman Floyd Barnes on his analysis regarding Thailand before I can continue on with other topics. I want to get a comment from Norman Floyd Barnes.
Greetings. Good morning from Washington. Today, Thailand has actually a historical vote. They are voting we call a double vote. Consists of they are looking to do a general election to like parliament members, 500 members voting for that, and they also deciding on the constitution. They are voting to change that. Preliminary reports are that there is a high voter turnout, and we should have a better answer today on exactly the actually is coming down to a two-party vote, a two-party contest, and the results should be coming in shortly. But right now, the polls are stating that there's a high voter turnout, which means that the likelihood of the Constitution being changed is great.
Of course, that comment was hugely important for us and the viewers inside Bangladesh. And I want to turn to our international consultant, John Dalton, in the studio. Sir, as we were discussing even before the break, that this is very sluggish and almost 3 leaders have been changed. And of course, what happened was Paton Tark Shinawatra had made a phone call to a general in Cambodia, and this is how the mass uprising had happened, and she had to be removed from her post in Thailand. Of course, it's a tourist hotspot in Southeast Asia, but it's now seeing through elections and changes of leaders. What is your observation?
Well, I mean, Thailand has always been a very, very fractious kind of a democracy. There are regular coups. I was there working on a project one time, and the Navy couped the Army. So I mean, they're just used to having overthrowing the government. As Norman pointed out, there's a couple of parties, a conservative rural party, the Boom Jai Thai, which has always been very people-oriented. There's an anti-establishment party, the so-called People's Party, which is more pro-democracy and anti-democracy to some extent, and anti-military. And the old ruling party, which Shinawatra was in, is also a force. And if you want to look at it in the Bangladeshi context, it's as if the Boom Jai Thai party is more like Jamaat. The ruling party, the anti-establishment party, the People's Party so-called, is more like BNP. And the Pheu Thai party, which is the incumbent party, is more like NCP in some respect, or AI maybe, or AL maybe. So I think it's important to look at this election as a way of setting the economic conditions in Southeast Asia, because they're a prime competitor for Bangladesh in the garment sector and in other areas. They're a big central hub and destination for tourism. It drives the economy in some respects of other countries nearby. But it's again that one telephone call led to the disbanding of the ruling party, and Shinawatra was ousted from party. They have an interim, just like we have here. There's an interim government, interim prime minister. So there's a lot of kind of similarities in terms of how the government is structured. They're electing 500 people, 400 from rural constituencies and from constituencies all over the country. and 100 are by proportional representation, which may have been the inspiration for what we're having here. But it's a very fractious political situation. There's always some kind of opposition. There will have to be there will not be a majority election. There will have to be an alliance, a coalition coming out of this. But I think it's something to watch very, very closely in terms of how the vote splits, in terms of informing how Bangladesh might vote on the 12th. If there's a heavy, heavy conservative vote in rural Bangladesh, that may be something to consider or think about when we look at the rural vote tallies that are coming in Bangladesh. It may be a movement towards conservatism, right-wing kind of parties taking effect. So I would watch that carefully, just as a harbinger of what could happen among the voting population here in Bangladesh.
Of course, a very excellent observation regarding how the Thai constituents are trying to elect its leader in comparison to Bangladesh. I believe it's important. I will have some updates regarding Bangladesh later on the program, but I want to focus now on the United States of America. And coming to Norman, there is a news article coming out of CNN US which focuses on Nancy Guthrie investigation. I'm not really sure how it is being imposed on the media in the United States of America, but it has the Federal Bureau of Investigation involved in such an investigation. I want to know more from Norman Floyd Barnes. What is the major news coming out of the United States of America, and what are the updates that you have on your desk, Norman?
Yes, you mentioned I didn't get that point, some news article coming out. I didn't get that.
This is regarding the Nancy Guthrie investigation. As the searches continues, authority resumed examining Guthrie's home and her neighborhood as the FBI offered a $50,000 reward for information. This is an active situation, I believe, inside the United States. However, I want to also add on the fact that how the people do not understand the administrative pressures on the United States or vice versa. So I want to know what other updates do you have from the Congress, if not from the Senate, and how the two sides, the Democrats and the Republicans, are seeing these things. I know that for a fact that the federal government has reopened from a 3 to 4 day shutdown. So I want to understand your observation regarding the U.S.
Yeah, thank you for the question. The United States is still, we have one agreement right now, believe it or not. Lawmakers, both Democrat and Republicans, both in agreement that the release of this AI generated cartoon of Barack Obama and Michelle Obama in with their head superimposed on a ape-like cartoon is very racist, very bigoted. It shows that it has little respect for the people of the United States, and is being viewed very harshly by both parties, Republicans and Democrats, against the Trump administration. President Trump refused to take it down. He supports it. His administration is getting, I guess, some humor from it, but the United States government, the people, are taking this very seriously. Believe it or not, this is Black History Month for the United States,
Right.
and it couldn't have come at a very worst time for this type of situation to basically again expose the world, the United States, that we have a racist and a bigoted regime. That's what the Black Caucus is saying, that the Trump administration is very racist, very bigoted against people of color and basic people at all. So both the Republicans, include some of the MAGA people, and the Democrats are very disgusted at this, and we're waiting to see exactly where this is going to go. Also in New York City, the new mayor has put out some executive orders about limiting the areas where the ICE officers, agents can come into schools, hospitals, and whatever. So they're putting out orders stating that these areas prohibited, and hopefully that will slow them down. But federal law supersedes state and city laws regarding ISIS enforcement. So right now, the situation, we have not changed a bit. The United States federal government is at odds with the people, and basically, ISIS is still on the table. There's negotiations supposed to be. We got another 8 to 7 days funding for that, but it doesn't appear, based on all appearance, how ISIS and administration is working. It's going to be something that the Congress and the United States people are going to tolerate in the future. So we're looking for changes to come up. This situation is getting actually ridiculous and impossible to deal with on a daily basis. Thank you.
Of course, very important updates coming from Norman's desk as well. I know for a fact that this has caused a huge debate amongst both of the sides in the US politics. And of course, it is Black History Month, as Norman was saying. And this video of a meme depicting former President Barack Obama and his wife as equivalent to apes is quite very racist. And of course, Republicans are coming out in protest of this issue, which said Republican Representative Mike Lawler said, also called on Trump to delete this post, calling it incredibly offensive, whether intentional or a mistake. I know this is not the first time a meme regarding political opponents has come out. It has happened before, of one of the leaders wearing a sombrero, and those memes becoming very popular on social media. So I want to understand from John Dalton, you see the nature of politics in the United States, sudden changes on social media, and how information has become so important in the day-to-day decisions of an administration, of an opposition figure who would be berated by a social media post such as this. I want to know alongside how you felt about this and what is the future of this issue, because that video was claiming that the 2020 election was fraudulent. So what is your take regarding this issue?
Well, I mean, let's start with the man whose office posted this. Huh? This is beneath the dignity of the office of the President of the United States. This man has consistently been a racist. We've had the Central Park Five, where he asked for people, 5 young black men, to be executed. Subsequently turned out they were innocent. He challenged the so-called birtherism program, challenging the whether or not Barack Obama was born in the United States. This latest one, he contends, well, I didn't know anything about it. That's unforgivable. Black History Month aside, this is just simply beneath the dignity of the United States of American president to post something like this on his social media. I mean, this takes us back 100 years in terms of trying to reawaken the spirit of Jim Crow. I mean, I'm a big Barack guy, but I was personally offended that anyone in the federal government of the United States would depict a former president and a former first lady in this way. It's just impossible for me to understand it. It also is a sort of evidence that there's no bottom with this man in terms of what he will try to do to insult and cast aspersions on other people who he feels steal the limelight from him. He is the center of the universe. He is the hub. Anybody else who is respected and admired as Barack is, except of course by the MAGA fringe that do all kinds of things about him. But I think it's really, as Norman has pointed out, and thank you, Norman, for bringing this out so well, is that the American people really are disgusted by such actions. Even hardcore MAGA are disgusted by the idea that somebody, a president of the United States, a president of the entire population, would resort to such kind of racial direct, not trying to hide it in any ways. This is a direct racial attack on a former president of the United States and a man much admired in the black community. I mean, it was shocking to me. Trump says, well, I didn't see the whole video. It wasn't my fault. It's my communication people. If you're in charge, you're in charge of the whole deal.
Yes, of
You don't
course.
get to
Yeah.
pick and choose which parts of it you're not responsible for. You're responsible for the whole enchilada. And this guy is really displaying his bigotism or bigotry.
Right.
But he has a history of this. And he appeals to a certain segment of the American population who secretly, at home, use these terms that are unacceptable in public and have these ideas. So I'm only hoping that somebody will call him up. And as Joe McCarthy back in the day was called up by somebody as being, have you no shame, Mr. McCarthy, Senator McCarthy, I hope somebody calls him up to his face, because this is totally unacceptable.
Well, on the other side, I understand that it is highly unacceptable, as Barack Obama is loved by many in the U.S. community. And not only so, executive orders, or the years of executive orders, these it came to popularity initially when Donald Trump would sign off on a rhetoric or on an issue that would not require congressional approval.
Right.
And this time around, we have Zoran Mamdani trying to protect his immigrant population in the city of New York. We've seen that federal agencies, federal inspectors of the ICE enforcement, immigration enforcement, they have caused havoc in Minnesota just last month.
Yeah.
And it is good enough for the new mayor-elect Zoran Mamdani signing this executive order, strengthening protections for immigrants. I believe New York is a city run by immigrants, and the mayor itself is an immigrant, as we know. So how do you see this issue of the mayor? Because it's a different approach to running of the day-to-day operations. We usually see Donald Trump signing off on executive orders, but here we have a mayor doing the same for the betterment of the people in his 5 boroughs.
Every layer of government in the United States, whether it's from the smallest little village, a borough, a town, up to the president, issues executive orders, things that they do under their own authority, their own state or local law, or under their own charter. So executive orders are a common thing to do. This is going to be attacked by the Republicans as trying to make New York into a sanctuary city, so-called, protecting the population, protecting certain areas that are off limits. But what this aggressive ICE invasion into American cities has done is set the local police against the federal ICE agents. And this kind of conflict is going to lead to trouble someplace in the extreme. It's only fair that people who are going to court, for example, for an immigration hearing, should be exempt from being snatched by ICE and taken out of the country. It's only fair that people who are doing their job, whether they're in Home Depot or Lowe's or any other kind of department store, should be free to engage in work, legitimate, logical, income-earning work for the benefit of themselves and their family, on which income they pay taxes. In fact, they've shown that the immigrant population pays $10 billion more per year in taxes than the cost of the federal government to enforce any laws. So this is, again, an overextension of this sort of rabid MAGAism, anti-Americanism. As you point out, Mamdani is a son of an immigrant. Everybody is a son of an immigrant in some way or another in the United States. My great-grandparents came to the United States, so I'm not a native-born guy. But it's leading to trouble, and I believe, Norman can correct me and he can chime in here, I believe that the continuing resolution for the Department of Homeland Security is being held up on this very, very issue, so that amendments can be made to the way that they carry out their business.
Of course, I want to get Norman's comment regarding this issue raised by John Dalton. Norman, how do you feel about this issue?
Yes, my reflection on is that this is time for major reflection, reconstruction, re-evaluating the function of Homeland Security. Unfortunately, the ISIS component of it is really changing how the people of the United States thinking about the government. The ISIS informant that the agents are designed to deal with immigration issues. They have taken upon themselves to be federal police officers. They are not. They are not trained. Matter of fact, I can share with you one personal story. One of my close friends,
Please.
godson, He's a border agent. He's an ISIS agent. He's based in Texas, and he was well. They volunteered. He was requested to volunteer to go to Minnesota. Uh, Recently, because of the changes, they moved out the agents, 700 agents, and he basically told me why. He said basically the agents they had in Minnesota had less than 46 days of training, and now they're now requiring agents. He's now been drafted to go to Minnesota. They're only taking agents that has at least 2 years plus of experience. They're taking on experienced agents with new instructions to go up there to deal with the ISIS issue. But unfortunately, the damage is already done. ISIS is a negative word, a negative connotation of going across the world, across the country. Even with the experienced officers out there coming out there now, the agents coming out there, they have a conflict with local, state, law enforcement. The communication since I retired is broken down. They don't is no longer existent. They moved at a situation where they basically a tactical SWAT-like approach is not to deal with law enforcement, not to protection, is aggression to attack and just get whatever it takes to get the immigrants out there. And they're using all of their techniques, military equipment, uh, all type of military terrorist type of activities to go in for this. This is something that had to be reevaluated because it's gone far beyond their normal tasks. They need to have new vision. They need to have new leadership. They need to be restructured, and they need to have some control. They need
Of
a
course.
change.
Of course, very important update coming from Norman Floyd Barnes about regarding those who have conducted this two numerous killings in Minnesota. Only had 46 days of preparation before entering this state. Of course, that's a breaking news coming out from Norman Floyd Barnes. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to take a short commercial break. Afterwards, we will have other updates. Do stay tuned.
বাংলাদেশ থেকে সিঙ্গাপুরে পণ্য বুকিং এর জন্য যোগাযোগ করুন ঢাকা সহ দেশের যে কোনো ৮০টি শাখা কেন্দ্রে। এসএ পরিবহন পার্সেল অ্যান্ড কুরিয়ার সার্ভিস, আপনার সেবা সব সময়।
Welcome, Grand Palace Hotel, Dhaka. A majestic lobby blending timeless elegance with modern design. Experience 5-star comfort in suites and rooms. Sophisticated fine dining restaurant. Crystal clear swimming pool for ultimate relaxation. Modern gym and serene spa for well-being. Perfect venue for corporate events, weddings and parties. Seamless and secured. Elegant and eye-catching design. Indulge, relax, discover the first 5-star chain hotels in Bangladesh. Grand Palace Hotel Dhaka, 22 Kakrail, Dhaka, Bangladesh.
Welcome to Grand Club at Mirpur 10 Dhaka. Elegant spa and wellness facility for ladies and gents. Play pool and snooker in international standard billiard zone.
welcoming all our viewers back on International Affairs. We were, of course, talking with Norman Floyd Barnes in Washington, D.C., as well as John Dalton in the studio regarding the U.S. politics and the U.S. issues. However, it is time to focus on Iran. We know in Muscat, the leaders of Iran and the other side, the U.S., have come to some kind of discussion, if not indirect negotiations have been held. Of course, it is to understand the Iran position, which is focusing strictly on its nuclear program. It insists on its right to enrich uranium, making its missile program and regional policies a part of the negotiation, while the U.S. position remains to extend the dialogue beyond nuclear issues to include Iran's ballistic missiles, support for armed proxies, and human rights record demands Tehran has so far refused. I want to begin in the studio with John Dalton. We know that this escalation is not new. We have the USS Abraham Lincoln moving in from the Pacific, and the entirety of the Middle East seem to be heightened. It is a heightened time, especially coming after last month's abduction of Nicolas Maduro. So the US has constantly strained foreign relations or foreign policy when it comes to other nations. It has abducted Nicolas Maduro, head of state of a nation of Venezuela, and now it has reciprocal relationship of one type of harassment towards the regime inside Iran regarding protests, regarding the 3-week-long protests that we've seen recently. The number of deaths of the protesters still remain very unclear, of many of the media houses reporting 30,000, while some reported only 2,000 to 3,000 deaths that has happened. So I want to understand what is the future, given that regional characters such as Oman has now stepped in.
Yeah. Well, the United States, leaving aside Maduro for the moment, that's, I think, a different issue altogether. But you have to wonder whether or not these kind of events that are triggered by purely events which are inside the boundary of a country are being used to deflect attention away from bad news in the United States or scandals in the United States. So we'll talk about that later, maybe. Iran has always said that they have the right to enrich uranium for non-nuclear purposes, for non-nuclear bomb purposes, let's say. And the United States has retaliated. There was a deal on the table 6 years ago that Donald Trump killed. That was the JTPOA that would have allowed some selective enrichment of uranium, but an end to the nuclear program in Iran. Trump withdrew from that agreement, even though the European Union was solidly behind it. So I think that the aggressive behavior of Donald Trump in these areas, which are really outside of his normal control, deeply displays an affinity for businesses, business interests, national partners that he is associated with. For example, he would not care about Iran if Iran was not the enemy of Israel. So the enemy of my friend is my enemy, is what Donald Trump is doing in Iran. Sure, we'd all like to see stability in Iran. I'm sure that every country in the Middle East would like to see Iran sort of be under control in some respect and be a worthy partner. Very intelligent, highly educated population. They're a theocracy, of course, and are difficult to deal with. But I think that we have to look at all of these kind of aggressive behaviors through a different lens. This is not a typical protecting the Western Hemisphere Monroe Doctrine kind of an issue. This is an aggressive assault against a country with which the United States has always had a difficult relationship, but with which Israel has an existential relationship. And I think that I see this totally as a way of projecting American power on behalf of Israel to convince the Ayatollah and others in Iran to not just to abandon their nuclear program, but to stop threatening Israel.
Of course, that's a very important issue, as you've raised, as it is an existential issue for Israel's position regarding Iran. And they have exchanged a fire last summer regarding the 12-day war. Of course, the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi described the talks as a good start, saying they would continue if the atmosphere of distrust is overcome. he also said that it was agreed that the process would continue and that the two sides would convene in Muscat at a later date. So there may be a future meeting regarding this coming up. Of course, the Omani Foreign Minister Badr Abu Saidi said the talks were very serious, helping clarify the positions of both sides and identifying areas for possible progress. Of course, there is also an addition to this news. The Donald Trump, the US president, signed an executive order establishing authorities to impose tariffs on nations that do business with Iran, but stopped short of actually imposing the penalties. So this is the statement that is coming out from the US. I want to get a comment regarding this matter from Norman Floyd Barnes, our geopolitical correspondent in District of Columbia. How are you seeing the two sides discussing this issue, and what are the updates regarding Iran and the US?
Yes, we're dealing with basically position and power, and basically intimidation. It's apparent the U.S. would use tariffs. They would use military presence to entice smaller countries to basically to comply with their demands. The issue with Iran is somewhat different. Iran it has a regime. It's a very large country. They have a lot of technology. They have a lot of knowledge. They have a lot of people, and they have a military also. These And the other part is that Iran is being supported by our arch rivals, China, Russia, and other places. They have support. They're getting support in. And if the United States continue to push this issue with Israel, and Israel is enticing the United States to take some type of forcible action, it will be the start of the next world conflict. I can tell you, if that should happen, the state of Israel will no longer exist. I'm giving you a forecast right now. That will be the first thing that will be missing. It is. You have to understand who Iran is being supported by. China has stated that they will never fire the first shot, but they will also ensure that you will not fire the second shot. That goes towards the situation we deal with this. We're looking at a proxy war type of situation. And the United States is trying to impose its will through, as I mentioned before, might, tariffs, military. But the world is changing. People are making new relationships, new deals, and whatever. And that type of bully type of attitude is no longer going to be sufficient to move change. So right now we're at a very sensitive period of time. It's a very time-sensitive situation, and the games and the risk is getting higher. We have information in the United States that about the ability of our attacks. Yes, we can attack, but the question still is, who do we fill in the gap if we go into the country, and what is the response is going to be? That is the big question. We have friends and enemies all around. Our friends, our enemies, our enemies, our enemies that is somehow involved in this. The issues with Greenland, Venezuela, all these things, people are moving, sharing information that ordinarily didn't share before to support these countries that are now being addressed and being imposed military actions or changes on. They are getting information to support. Iran got information from our friends in Europe about matters that had a tremendous impact, and actually it could have stopped the last week the attack. So everybody is really up in arms about this situation, about the big boy approach with by the Western world, the United States, and the proxy war is in process right now. There are things are going on, to undermine and control things. So no one wants a war. No one wants an all-out war because it's going to be a devastator. May not be a nuclear war, but it's going to be a devastator. We are now in the age of technology, and that is what we're looking at. A technological war that will destroy our critical national infrastructure globally. So with that happening, no one wants to get into that situation because the deal is countries need to make money, they need to make trade, they don't need to be impeded by what they can't do because of somebody made a bad decision. So a lot of conversation is going to happen over the next couple of months about how things are happening in the world, with the world order, and hopefully the United States continue to engage in these conversations and talk about the consequences versus what they aspire to do and make an adjustment and get the world back into a stable situation. We have the ability, the United States, to basically stabilize this situation instead of accelerating the situation. No one wants war. Everybody wants to get along with peace. And as you know, the Trump administration, which is a transactional administration, is all about the deal.
Of course, that's some important updates coming from Norman Floyd's table regarding the art of the deal from Donald Trump, as well as living in a modern world regarding technology. And that is the exact same topic that I will pick out in the studio with John Dalton. We know that the Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez has announced a new step to regulate social media platforms and strengthen protections for minors, stating digital spaces have enabled criminal activity, disinformation and harmful content. To some extent, even I understand that screen time should be limited for minors and children, because I am a father of two as well. I want to focus on this issue with John Dalton in the studio. It is not just Spain that has recently implemented this kind of scenario. It's the same with Australia and Germany to some extent. I want to understand what is the importance of this kind of decision making from the very top of a nation to understand its juniors, its future. So what is your comment?
Well, I think that all of these social media platforms, the argument against them, what they're doing is that they are ruining the future generation, that they are so affecting the youth and brainwashing them in some respects and getting them involved in social media topics by design. That's the main point that we're looking at here. That it has come to be whistleblowers inside Facebook have said, for example, that Facebook intentionally designs addiction of young people in their software itself. That it's all designed with algorithms and to make young people watch more and more and more and more. And this, for example, anybody who has used any one of these platforms, whether it's WhatsApp or Instagram or Snapchat and so forth, understand that this repetition of these reels over and over again, these short, brief movies, basically creates this sort of addiction of young people looking at these over and over and over again. In addition, there's some scandalous behavior by some, like X now has a media product, a software product, social media product called Grok. And a young woman in Australia, which was the beginning of this Australian problem, a young woman in Australia who was a regular user of X and other things, boys in her school were able to undress her via the media itself. The Grok allows you to undress a character. And she became so embarrassed and so upset about this that she took her own life. So that was the beginning of the Australian effort to say, look, under 16, you're not allowed to use it at all. Other countries have said, well, you can use it under certain circumstances, but only at certain times. But, I mean, this is, as I've mentioned on this show several times, Instagram is a cesspool. That it is absolutely should be restricted for young people in Bangladesh. It should only be available for anybody else who wants to use it after school hours, maybe only from 8 to midnight or from 8 to 10. The most excessive use of TikTok in Great Britain is from midnight to 3 a.m. So it's a pervasive destabilizing mental health situation that if countries do not take action to address this, the future population of these young people will be deeply scarred.
Of course.
I mean, how could a policeman exercise his duty effectively when he has participated in the process of undermining the truth, of making victims? I mean, how can somebody in the military be disciplined and obey command? How can a guy respect his wife when he's had posted images of some girl or looked at some images of some girl? It's a destructive, very, very socially destructive medium, and I think it has to be addressed. And I'm happy to see Australia do it, Germany's doing it, Spain is doing it. The United States, of course, is a wholly owned subsidiary of the tech giants, and so nothing will happen there, probably. But I would like to see some restrictions by this new government that comes in put on the use of social media in Bangladesh. Whether whoever gets elected, it's not a religious issue, it's a social development issue that can affect the future.
Of course, very important updates from John Dalton regarding social media and the implications that it has on human life as well as minors. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been a lovely discussion. It's time to take a short break, but after the break, we shall discuss about how social media narrates Bangladesh's future. Do stay tuned.
World-class gym facility with exclusive equipment for man and woman. A restaurant of delicious local and international cuisine. Fully air-conditioned building with spacious banquet, car lift, sky view rooftop restaurant, all in one. Grand Club Limited, Mirpur 10.
হ্যাঁ গো,
আর কত দূর?
আরে আমি তো ফিডার গাড়ির লগে।
তোমার গরু হাঁস মুরগি মাছ তো অনশন শুরু কইরা দিছে।
কি কও? অনশন শুরু কইরা দিছে? কেডা? হাঁস মুরগি মাছ।
আরে ওগো মতি গতি দেখা মনে হইতাছে এসএফএন ছাড়া কিছুই খাইবো না।
হ্যাঁ গো, এসএফিটার খবর ওরা জানলো কেমনে?
আরে ভালো জিনিসের খবর ছড়াতে কি আর মাইক লাগে? খবর ভাসে বাতাসে বাতাসে।
আরে দেখো,
এসএফিটার জাদু। সম্পূর্ণ নিজস্ব তত্ত্বাবধানে বিশেষজ্ঞদের সমন্বয়ে প্রস্তুত হয় এসএফিডের পশু খাদ্য। অত্যাধুনিক প্রযুক্তিতে তৈরি এই পশু খাদ্য যেমন নিরাপদ তেমনি স্বাস্থ্যকর। এসএ ফিড, নিরাপদ ফিড, স্বাস্থ্যকর প্রোটিন। এসএ অ্যাগ্রোফিডস লিমিটেড একটি এসএ গ্রুপ অফ কোম্পানিজের প্রতিষ্ঠান।
Grand Palace, 5-star chain hotel, Zinda Bazar, Sylhet. Local and international
Welcome back on International Affairs. We were joined by Norman Floyd Barnes from Washington, D.C., who has given us some important updates. And now in the studio, we have John Dalton. I want to focus on this last segment regarding some important issues. We were talking about social media and how it escapes the future for not only the rest of the nation, but of course in Bangladesh as well. Over the weekend, we have seen some active violent issues coming out from Shahbag Circle. Of course, protesters were there from the Inqilab Manshur trying to demand their justice for Shahid Osman Hadi. But in that while, a protest has erupted in violence regarding with the police, and we've seen not only the commissioner being there trying to control the situation, we've seen how some members of the security agencies were reactive towards this cause of finding justice for Osman Hadi. But not only so, over the weekend we have important updates in Bangladesh. We have seen the leader of the Bangladesh Nationalist Party delivering his verdict or his aspects to the agency Reuters in the upcoming election, and he said that there is no scope for a coalition government with Bangladesh Jamaat Islami, which is very important to understand the next few days of political stature in Bangladesh. And all of this was readily available through social media. Even last night, we have seen popular multimedia companies, journalists been picked up by members of the forces. And of course, they were released later. But of course, the freedoms that we have all enjoyed the last couple of months is coming to an end. According to the CA Shafiqul Alam's response, this has been the time, the most important moment in Bangladesh history where we all had the freedom of judging all the political parties and judging all the events that happen in Bangladesh. So I want to understand with John Dalton in the studio, social media has huge implications in the decision making of a nation. We also come to find out that those who are inmates in jail will also have an opportunity to cast their vote through postal ballot. What is your observation? I want to know how you are feeling about Bangladesh, about the observers' situation in Bangladesh, and how many of those who will be contesting in Bangladesh's seats. What is your observation?
Well, I think Bangladesh has always been worried about misinformation and disinformation. It was used, it's used by every regime in some way or not in the world. I mean, somebody controls the press. You go to China, they control the press. There's in the United States, we brag about having the First Amendment rights, but many people are prevented from doing so. I think here there's a tendency as the elections come closer and closer for a lot of intentional disinformation to be released. I mean, the stakes are very high. 5 years future of the next government. So people think that winning at any cost is essential. I saw the comment about the not wanting to have a coalition government with between two certain parties, but I think there's going to have to be some accommodation. I think that all these parties have shown a power and a prestige and have attracted some public interest. I think it'd be in the best interest of everybody to have, if not a coalition government, at least a collegial, non-competition, non-conflicting government in the future. I don't think the country can survive that very easily. I think that the rural population are going to have, the profile is going to be one voting on one way, and I think the urban population will vote somewhat differently. And I think that tension is going to continue to play out in terms of investment, location of resources, participation in government. That rural-urban split, which is severe now, is going to become exacerbated in my opinion. We'll see. Now, as to the people in prison who are given the right to vote and the people who are outside the country that are given the right to vote by postal ballot, I mean, this is a unintended consequences issue. Clearly, the civil liberties of people are being protected. They're given the right to vote. But there are so many potential ramifications from this that may not have been properly thought through. Both in terms of the 1 million or so people who are living outside the country who have been given the right to submit a postal ballot, as well as the people in prison, many of whom are political prisoners and have a political bias and may vote a certain way.
Yes.
So I think that there was not, I mean, I think this was characteristic actually of a lot of things, but there was not really thought through what are the ramifications, what are the implications, how could this go bad? Before policy was announced and adopted and put into place.
Of course, that is very important updates that you've given us, as well as there is another news. The Bangladesh Election Commission has suspended the observation, accreditation and distribution over 10,000 observer cards to a local NGO named People's Association for Social Advancement as of February 7th, and it said by the action that was taken, the suspension was announced by the Chief Advisor's Press Secretary Shafiqul Alam and Deputy Press Secretary Abul Kalam Azad Majumdar following a meeting on the election preparation. Almost of the 50,000 or so election observation status, 10,000 observer cards were given to this organization, a local NGO. It has been suspended just a week, just yesterday it was suspended. So just merely a few days before the election. We have only 4 days left before everyone can continue on contesting. What is your observation? Do you think that violence may ensue, especially given after how we've seen the events on Friday after the prayers?
I don't know about the violence, but I think it's a very logical decision by the government to suspend these cards for people who are partisan observers. In other words, people who may have a vested interest in the results of the election and can influence people while they're going to vote. So that decision, it seems logical in some respects. When you're an election observer, as I have been in Egypt, election observers have to be totally neutral, unbiased. They're only looking at whether the procedures are being properly followed as outlined in the law. They have no right to participate or advise anybody or talk to anyone in line about who they're going to vote for or how they're going to vote or why it's important to vote this way or that way, whether for the referendum or for the election. So keeping international observers in place is probably a safe, sound policy. It should not be seen necessarily as, it's sort of like making sure that people who have a vested interest are not engaged in influencing how the vote is going to come out. And I think that would be a logical decision by any government to say, okay, let's restrict, if 10,000 is a lot of observers of a local NGO.
1/5 of the entirety bank.
Yeah, well, that's a lot too many people who may be compromised in some way. You're only looking at, is a little ballot box open? Are people protected so that their vote is not observed? Are people not going into the voting booth to tell them how to vote? Now, you have a problem in Bangladesh, quite honestly, and in other countries too, where there's a highly illiterate population that cannot read the ballot. And they need to be instructed like, okay, that's why you have the sheaf of wheat and the boat and all of this kind of stuff in the past, is that people could essentially vote for the symbol because they couldn't read well enough to know what it was all about, which is a real challenge when it comes to looking at that referendum, you know, and the vote on the referendum. But I think it was a logical decision by government, it seems to me, to try to restrict anybody influencing the election. And I hope that there is no violence, although it's already starting to show up both internally and in terms of between the contestants. And the army is supposedly mobilizing 100,000 troops to try to maintain, along with the police, some presence at on election day.
Right.
That would give people the confidence to go and vote. And so we want people to vote, but they should be voting without restriction and without fear.
Of course. Very important contributions by our international consultant, John Dalton, and it is wonderful to see him back on the studio. I thank you for your valuable insight and contribution towards international affairs, proudly broadcasting from SATV studio, as well as our Washington, D.C. geopolitical correspondent, Norman Floyd Barnes. Ladies and gentlemen, it is February the 8th. I want to end with a bit of history. Princess Elizabeth has formally proclaimed herself Queen Elizabeth and head of the Commonwealth and defender of the faith on this very day in 1952. And that's it for today. I shall catch you all on tomorrow. Please do remember once more how social media does affect the daily day-to-day life of everyone. That's it for today. I shall see you all tomorrow.